Hello and welcome to the Pinwheels pregame show. Lots to talk about this week for the White Sox. They had the 5th overall pick in the draft. We have some new Garrett Crochet trade rumors. While the MLB world was distracted in the All-Star game, Chris Getz was out there signing free agents. Lots to discuss. But first, as always, this show is sponsored by Homage. Scan that QR code, top of your screen. After we're done here, you can get yourself a shirt. Bears training camp getting underway. Hard Knocks is coming up. Caleb Williams just signed. No better time to get yourself a Bears shirt. Lord knows the White Sox aren't doing anything. Showed out Imanaga, though. He showed out in the All-Star game last night. You can get yourself a Cubs shirt, too. You name it, they have it. Scan that QR code. Pick out yourself something nice. All right, let's get right into it. All-Star game last night. We'll get into the draft in just a second, but since the All-Star game just happened, I want to talk a little bit about that first. The White Sox and Cubs, pretty good, well represented yesterday. Well, not well represented. The players that did show up for them, Shota Imanaga and Garrett Crochet, they both pitched really well. Both of them had a scoreless inning. Imanaga, I believe, was the only National League pitcher to have a 1-2-3 inning. He was very impressive. Crochet looked good too. Did give up a base runner, but he had a strikeout, limited the damage. So that was nice to see. I saw a lot of people asking why he only threw 2 innings in his start leading into the All-Star break. And I think this is why. They wanted him to enjoy his moment, let him have a chance to pitch in his first All-Star game. He's also been on an innings restriction. So I think that answered that question, why he was only limited to 2 innings, his last start with the White Sox beforehand. So I was very glad they let him go out there and pitch in that game. The one non-White Sox Cubs things I did kind of want to talk about. I saw a little bit of controversy for Paul Skeens getting the start for the National League All-Star team, because he's only been he made his debut only 2 months ago. Now, make no mistake, Paul Skeens is a stud. He definitely, talent-wise, he is an all-star for sure. He showed that he belonged with the best of the best the way he performed. So it's not even a talent thing. He's a very easy guy to root for as well. So, it's not that it was for a lack of talent, but I do kind of, and it is good marketing by the MLB because he's one of the more exciting players, and this is what this game is all about. So it's not like, I'm very upset about it. But let's be honest with ourselves here. As far as starting the All-Star game, looking at his track record, did he really deserve it after only 2 months pitching? Like, he does have the talent to be the All-Star starter. But, I have a little bit of a problem where he hasn't even played a full season. He just got called up, and they let him start the All-Star game. Like, if he wasn't dating a very popular gymnast from LSU, does he still get that start? Probably not. I think a lot of it's marketing. I think a lot of it is really popular because of Livy Dunn, if we're being honest. I do think, like I said, I do think he's talented. He's an easy guy to root for. I like watching him pitch too. So, but I did see an argument made, and I kind of agree with it, like off of merit, like he probably didn't deserve to be starting. He was starting that game because of marketing. He's very popular. He's got a very popular girlfriend. That was good marketing for the MLB to let him have that start. But it was almost the equivalent of, like, if you're in Mercedes when he was on that, couple week heater, if he had gotten called up a few months before the All-Star game happened and went on that heater, would all of a sudden he's an All-Star? I mean, so that's kind of where gets a little bit murky there, but not a huge deal. That was just thought that popped in my mind. I thought the MLB, they capitalized on it because they know he's a big marketing draw. All right, let's get into the White Sox draft. Specifically, we're going to talk their 5th overall selection. You can read the full list of draft picks they have. One of our White Sox writers, Craig Rowland, did a really good job tracking that whole draft. He has all of their picks from the first couple of days. You can kind of go on there and see. There were some complaints about kind of where they were slotting guys just to try and save some money for a later draft. I won't get into all of that. I'm not going to pretend like I am some draft expert. However, I did watch a lot of SEC baseball. I'm living in Missouri, obviously Mizzou, they're in the SEC. So I am familiar with Hagen Smith. So I do feel like I can, and Jack Caglione, who is the other guy that they wanted to take. So that's what I'm going to primarily focus on, because I feel like that's kind of where better knowledge is. There's other guys out there if you want a more in-depth breakdown of some of those later picks that you can follow. Also recommend checking out Craig's article. You can see the full list of guys there on Sports Mockery. So there's a little bit of controversy. The White Sox selected Hagen Smith out of Arkansas, left-handed pitcher. And initial reaction, it looked like they were lining up the replacement for Garrett Crochet. A lot of similarities there. Hard throwing left-hander, SEC school. He looks major league ready right away. I don't think it's going to take very long to develop him. But the White Sox, they had a need for bats. That farm system, kind of lacking bats. They already have Schultz in there. You already have Crochet, who's only 25 years old. So, like, that screamed immediately, look, they're probably going to trade Crochet, or at least they're going to try to. We got a replacement lined up. So I saw some people that was like kind of rubbed the wrong way, because it's like, you know, it's hard to get behind this organization that's just rinse and repeat. Let's draft a guy to replace the guy we just drafted a few years ago because we're not contending and we want to trade him for more prospects. And it's just goes on this ongoing cycle, and it can be frustrating. But I do think it was a smart pick, because number one, the guy, he's a stud. I mean, like, I'll pull up his numbers. His final year in Arkansas were insane. Against Oregon State, one of the better teams in the country, he had 6 innings. He got through with the 6 innings, 78 pitches, and he had 17 strikeouts. Like, it's absurd. Like, the man is a stud. His last year, 2.04 ERA, 17.3 strikeouts per 9 innings, and he didn't walk a whole lot of guys either. A 0.893 whip. So not a lot of hits given up, not a lot of base runners given up. If he reaches back, that fastball can hit triple digits. Like, the guy's going to be major league ready. He was the best player on the board available. And that's what good teams do. You regardless of need, you draft the best player available. I feel like his floor is a lot higher than Jack Caglianone's. And a lot of people wanted Caglianone. Like, that seemed like the pick. First baseman, power hitter. He slashed 419, 544, 875, over 30 home runs last year. It seemed like the obvious pick. However, there are some red flags that pop up with him. And this is why I also think it's a good pick for the White Sox. Not only was Smith the best available pitcher or player on the board, in my opinion, the Sox have a good track record of developing left-handed pitchers. We saw it with Rodon. We saw it with Chris Sale. Probably going to see it with Crochet. Well, Rodon maybe not the best example, because he didn't really pop off until before they cut him and re-signed him. But they have drafted left-handers before. They have had success. We saw it again with Noah Schultz. So, like, this is an organization, and now you got Brian Bannister here too. With the Brian Bannister kind of overseeing everything, that shouldn't be overlooked either. This team can develop pitching. We've seen it with Crochet this year. And so Smith ended up in the right spot. That's kind of in the White Sox wheelhouse where they're comfortable. Positional players, though, historically, they have not nearly been as good. And the most recent example is Andrew Vaughn. You know, you look at his numbers in college, it was kind of similar to Caglianone's. Like, he was tearing it up in college. Golden Spikes winner out of Cal, considered one of the best college hitters in the draft that season. The White Sox have butchered his development. So it's not as much of a surefire thing. And there are also some red flags that show up with Caglianone. Now, you look at that and you'd be like, well, what are the red flags? What have the White Sox struggled with the last couple of years? It's been plate discipline. They have a lot of these guys, like Eloy Jimenez, for example, were touted like, hey, they got a lot of power, but the plate discipline not necessarily there. Well, we haven't really seen that translate, even with the power aspect, and the plate discipline continues to be a concern. Yohan Moncada, another guy, you know, some of the strikeout numbers are a little bit higher than you would like over the last couple of years. So as a team, you know, they're 29th in walks this year in the majors. Last year, they were dead last. They do not have a lot of plate discipline. Caglianone, that's kind of the one red flag that kind of stood out. Is if you look at his chase rate throughout his college career, it was around 40%. That's pretty high for a college number. Now you look at that on base percentage, and it's a 544 on base percentage last season. You're telling yourself like, well, like, look at that on base percentage. Well, if you dig into the numbers, and I was kind of looking through his baseball reference, he did have 58 walks last year. That's a pretty good number. He didn't have a ton of strikeouts either, but 58 walks, that's impressive until you see 31 of those 58 walks were intentional walks. So that kind of inflated the numbers a little bit. And now, you know, that's a good sign. Barry Bonds got intentionally walked a lot, so I'm not going to hold it against him necessarily. But when you look at the 40% chase rate and you see that on base percentage kind of getting inflated a little bit because of all those intentional walks, really not as good plate discipline as it would look on paper. And the year before, he only had 17 walks. And 3 of those were intentional, but they didn't intentionally walk him nearly as much. And with those 17 walks, he had 58 strikeouts. So that's where kind of some of these plate discipline concerns pop up with Caglianone. You mix that in with an organization historically not done a great job drafting positional players. You also got to factor in too, with a lot of these college hitters, some of those numbers are inflated because you have the aluminum bat. Like your power numbers are going to be up. because the ball is going to be flying harder off the bat. That's not to say he won't be a stud. Maybe the Royals develop him well and he torments the White Sox for years, but the Sox took the best available player on the board. That's what good organizations do. Hopefully it's not to replace Crochet, but even if it is, okay, I understand that thought process because you got the best guy available, and there's a lot of red flags with Kegley. So I was very happy with the pick. I think that Schultz-Smith 1-2 combo could be filthy for years to come. And then imagine if they don't trade a 25-year-old Crochet, you have that rotation with Thorpe in it. Like that, now we're cooking. So and there's also, you got to factor in too, White Sox don't have a top 10 pick next year. They're going to be the worst team in baseball, but under the MLB rules, they're going to be picking outside the top 10. So this is a very important draft for them, where you might as well, like, forget drafting off need. You get the best guy available. That's what good organizations do. That's what the White Sox did. So I really can't complain too much about that pick. I'm excited to see what he does moving forward. What's up, Andy, in the comments? Happy to see you back on. Everyone listening in, we appreciate you stopping by. This Pinwheels pregame show every Wednesday at noon. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think, or if there's any other topics you want us to bring up, feel free to throw it in there. So moving on to Crochet, and that was the other big news that kind of came out from over the weekend. Bob Nightingale, he had his USA Today notebook. He's well plugged into the White Sox. A couple other nuggets kind of came out. So the White Sox initial report was, White Sox, if you need a quick refresher, they made an attempt to extend Crochet. Things didn't go well. They now intend to trade him. The Dodgers made an offer. That was quickly rejected. This weekend it was reported the Padres also made an offer. And, the White Sox are very familiar with the Padres farm system after going through that Dylan Cease deal. They were the ones that pulled the trigger, so the Padres came calling again. White Sox also reportedly turned down that offer. The Yankees were also reportedly interested, according to Nightingale, but the White Sox said that package, if they want him, would have to include Spencer Jones, who's an outfielder. He's a top 100 prospect. And that's kind of the other reason I think the White Sox did not go with a bat here in the draft, and they went with the best available guy on the board with Smith, because I do think during this trade deadline, a lot of the guys you're going to see him bring in prospect-wise, or even just free agent signings over the offseason, it's going to be pretty bat heavy. I think they're going to use this Crochet trade, if they can get the deal done, to restock the farm system with some bats. And to Andy's point, if they keep, they keep Crochet moving forward, they're going to have a pretty solid pitching lineup, and that is going to help attract some free agent bats when you kind of see that lineup of pitching that they do have. And now, so I do think they are intending to trade Crochet. Yeah, I mean, you look, all where there's smoke, there's fire. So, like, Bob's been reporting it. They drafted his replacement, seemingly. It looks like they're trying to trade him. Now, where it might get difficult is if you look at the brief history we've had as Chris Getz as a general manager. Really, he's been gifted, he's inherited two gems here where they he inherited Dylan Cease, who they knew they were going to trade. So that's a big piece to kind of get to trade. And now you kind of stumble into Crochet where you have a chance to trade him too. So that's kind of an unusual position for a guy that's been general manager for less than a year. But if you remember with the Cease stuff over the offseason, Getz was reportedly very stingy. He had a high asking price. He was not willing to budge off that asking price until a deal was met. Because there was a couple times in like December, they were like, oh, White Sox getting close to a deal. And it didn't happen until after spring training. So they waited a long time to trade him because he was adamant on, we are not trading this guy unless I get the return I want. And from what it looks like now, after turning down a deal from the Dodgers, reportedly, turning down a deal from the Padres, having a really high asking price with Spencer Jones from the Yankees, it's probably going to be like that again. Well, the problem is with that trade deadline coming up, like, there might not be teams willing to meet that price when you only have a half a season of a sample size with Garrett Crochet. As good as he's been, there is some risk there. So I'm not convinced that he necessarily will get traded, not because they don't want to trade him, just because they might not find the deal that they're looking for in time for that trade deadline. So I did think that was kind of interesting to see. And you know what? If you are going to trade him, though, that's the right approach. It was the same thing. I said the same thing with Cease. If you have to trade him, which I've made my thoughts very clear, I do not want them to trade Garrett Crochet. I think it'd be stupid if they traded Garrett Crochet. I think you should try and extend him, but I won't rehash that whole argument again. You can listen to previous shows for that. But if you are intending on trading him, you might as well stay firm with that high asking price. So I'm glad that Getz is not budging off of that. He wants the best available offer that he can get for him. That's the way it should operate. But that I did find pretty interesting from Bob there. We'll see how it unfolds. Other trade rumors that kind of popped up. The Phillies reportedly interested and Tommy Pham. They do need an outfielder. I think that could be interesting. You package a guy with Pham like with Fetty, because I think the Sox, they feel like you can get a pretty good return for Eric Fetty too. Now, people forget how good he's been this year. Like, he arguably was an all-star snub. He has a higher WAR per pitchers than even Crochet did. It was like a 4.0 WAR. He got that ERA down, I think, to like 2.99 after his last start. It's sub 3 now. Man's been a stud, and he's under control for another year. So I think that's going to be another one where you could probably get a pretty good top 10 organizational prospect from another team for an Eric Fetty. So I think that's where you're probably going to get another bat out of there too. So that'd be interesting. And if you package the two together, maybe you get something even something even better. So White Sox, while everyone was watching the All-Star game, they were out making move. They got a former top 100 prospect. White Sox signed, according to John Heyman, Nick Senzel. And Senzel he drafted by the Reds, and things have not really gone all that well for Senzel. Been a below replacement average player. He was DFA'd by the team last year. He got picked up by the Nationals, and things haven't gone all that great. You kind of go through his numbers. One of the things that stood out, he's a pretty versatile player. He can play third base. He's played the majority of this season at third base, but he can also play the outfield. And we talked about this with some of the Cagliano concerns. White Sox don't have a lot of plate discipline. Well, this season, Senzel, he has an 11%, I think it's 11.4% walk rate. He doesn't hit the ball very hard. He doesn't hit for average. He doesn't hit for a whole lot of power. But what does he do? He does get on base a lot. That's a pretty good walk rate for a guy that, doesn't have a whole lot else going for him. And he does have some versatility. So I saw that move simply as, we want to bring in this guy. One, we can help kind of our team approach, because we're trying to get all these guys to be better plate discipline-wise. I think we saw that with Robbie Grossman too when they brought him in. They wanted guys that get on base, that can work good at bats, help out the rest of the hitters by seeing more pitches. And then two, simply once they start trading away a lot of these assets, like the Tommy Phams of the world. I know they're trying to trade Eloy too. Probably won't get anything for him, but they're going to start trading away a lot of these. Paul DeYoung, infielder, they're probably going to try and get something for him. Start trading away all these guys. You need someone to fill in for him. So I think that's where Senzel comes in. You just get a little bit more depth there. Now, I'd be interested to see where they play him, because it is kind of, even if you're trading a Paul DeYoung, it is still a bit of an odd fit, because as I mentioned, he primarily plays third base, and they got Lenyn Sosa kind of holding down the fort at third base. And Sosa's been quietly, heading into that All-Star break, he's been damn good defensively, and the bat's starting to pick up. And that's why the argument I had with Dominic Fletcher too, even though the White Sox are going to be terrible this year, and Sosa, up until a few months ago, really didn't look like a major league ready player, you might as well play him for an extended period just to see what you have. And he's starting to show, hey, he could be a good bench option on a contending team down the road. Now, I don't think he's a starter on a World Series caliber team by any means, but he's starting to show some stuff where, you're really going to move him off third base? I don't know. And I'd also be interested to see what they do when Yoan Moncada gets back, because he started a rehab assignment already. He should be back probably late July, is from what I've been reading. Where do they move Sosa then? When you got him there, do they move him to second base? So that's going to be interesting to see kind of how they balance that. Bit of an odd fit for Senzel, but I kind of interpreted it as, they're going to be trading some guys. They want some more depth and insurance. I wouldn't look too much more into that move. So that's really all we got for you this week. Kind of a little bit lighter with the All-Star break being off. But as I mentioned, you go to Sports Mockery, sportsmockery.com to read Craig's article. He's got all 10 picks in there. We also got a lot of analysis of that Hagen-Smith pick. And tonight, of course, the regular Pinwheels and Ivy will be at 8 o'clock. Zoe, Aldo Fids will all be on there, talking some White Sox, talking some Cubs, and any other bullshit that pops up. Thank you guys for listening. We'll be back next week, Wednesday, noon, talking some White Sox baseball. Join us for your lunch break. Another reminder, scan that QR code. You can get yourself a shirt. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a wonderful rest of your week.